He had everything most people only dream about, yet trust was the one thing he could never buy. Adrian Cole was known as a quiet success story, a man who built his fortune from nothing and never forgot what it felt like to be overlooked. He lived in a glass-walled house on a hill overlooking the city, not to show off, but because he liked the quiet height gave him. From up there, the world felt distant and calm, as if problems stayed below. Adrian woke up early every morning, usually before sunrise. He liked the soft silence before the city came alive. He would sit by the window with a cup of plain black coffee and watch the sky slowly change colors. This routine had stayed with him for years, even after money changed everything else. The simple habits reminded him of who he was before success arrived. He had grown up in a small rented apartment with peeling paint and broken heaters. His mother worked 2 jobs, and his father left when Adrian was still young. There were no safety nets, no family connections, no favors waiting to be called in. Adrian learned early that if he wanted something, he had to work for it. That lesson shaped him deeply. By his mid-30s, Adrian had built a technology company that solved problems most people did not even know existed. He avoided the spotlight and rarely gave interviews. Money followed him, but attention never interested him. What he wanted more than wealth was peace, and peace came from control. Control over his work, control over his space, control over who he allowed close. That last part had always been difficult. Adrian had been betrayed before, not just once, but enough times to leave a permanent mark. Old friends who only stayed when he paid. Business partners who smiled while planning exits behind his back. Even past relationships had left him cautious. People changed when they learned how much he was worth. Their words stayed sweet, but their eyes changed. So when he met Lily, it surprised him how easily his guard lowered. They met in an ordinary place, one that had nothing to do with wealth or status. She worked at a community art center that Adrian quietly supported through donations he never attached his name to. He had gone there one afternoon to see how the space was being used. Lily was showing children how to paint, laughing when they made a mess, kneeling down to speak to them at eye level. Adrian noticed her kindness before her beauty. She spoke gently, listened fully, and treated everyone the same. When she finally noticed him standing near the door, she smiled without knowing who he was. There was no calculation in her expression. No curiosity about money, just simple warmth. They talked briefly that day, about art, about how children saw the world, about how the city could be loud but still lonely. Adrian left feeling lighter than usual, confused by how much the conversation stayed with him. Over the next few weeks, he found reasons to visit again. Each time, Lily greeted him the same way. No extra attention. No hidden questions. When she finally asked what he did for work, it felt natural, not strategic. He answered vaguely, saying he worked in technology. She nodded and moved on, more interested in whether he liked sunsets or storms. That ease pulled him in. Their relationship grew slowly. They walked through parks, ate at small cafes, and talked about life without rushing. Adrian noticed how Lily lived simply. She rented a modest apartment, cooked most of her meals, and found joy in small things. When she laughed, it came from deep inside, not practiced or controlled. For the first time in years, Adrian allowed himself to imagine a future that was not built on fear. Months passed, and the truth about his wealth eventually surfaced. It had to. Someone recognized him. Someone whispered. The change worried him, but Lily's reaction was calm. She asked questions, yes, but not about numbers or luxury. She asked why he worked so much, why he carried so much weight on his shoulders, why he looked tired even when smiling. That response gave him hope. When Adrian proposed, it was not dramatic. No crowd, no cameras, just a quiet evening and honest words. Lily cried and said yes, holding his hands as if that was all she needed. In that moment, Adrian believed he had finally escaped his past. But belief does not erase fear. Fear waits. As the wedding planning began, subtle things started to bother him. Comments from people around them, changes in tone, new expectations that came with his name and status. Lily never demanded anything, but the world around her seemed to lean differently now. Adrian noticed how others spoke to her, how opportunities suddenly appeared. He began to wonder if love could stay pure under pressure. One evening, Adrian attended a private gathering hosted by an old acquaintance. The room was full of powerful people, all speaking carefully and listening for advantage. During the night, a man told a story meant to be amusing. It was about a wealthy individual who pretended to lose everything to see who stayed. People laughed. Adrian did not. The idea stayed with him long after the night ended. He argued with himself for days. Testing love felt wrong, even cruel. Yet the fear of living a lie felt worse. He had promised himself long ago that he would never again be blind to the truth. He started paying closer attention, not just to Lily, but to himself, to how tightly he held control, to how often he questioned happiness. He asked himself whether he was protecting his heart or slowly destroying it. Then came the moment that tipped everything. Adrian overheard a conversation by accident. It was not Lily speaking, but someone close to her. Careless comment about comfort, about security, about how lucky she was. It was said casually, without malice, but it echoed loudly in his mind. That night, Adrian could not sleep. He stared at the ceiling, listening to the quiet hum of the house. The idea he had tried to bury returned stronger. What if something happened to him? What if the money disappeared? Would love remain? He hated himself for thinking it. But he hated uncertainty more. Adrian began researching things he never thought he would. Medical conditions. Physical limitations. Life after loss. He spoke to professionals under the excuse of curiosity. Each conversation pulled him closer to a line he knew he should not cross. Still, he crossed it. He convinced himself it was not about punishment, but clarity. Not about trapping someone, but understanding reality. If Lily loved him for who he truly was, then nothing would change. If not, then it was better to know now than after vows were spoken. The decision formed quietly, without drama. Once it settled, it felt heavy, but certain. Adrian looked at Lily one evening as she spoke, excitedly about a small detail for the wedding. He smiled, nodded, and held her hand. Inside, his heart ached. He wished he could silence the doubt. He wished love alone was enough to quiet his past, but his past had taught him one lesson clearly. Truth always comes out, and he believed that. Whatever pain truth caused now would be less than living a lifetime built on false belief. So he made a plan that would change everything, a plan that began with a lie so big. It would test not only Lily's love, but his own humanity. The decision did not change Adrian overnight, but it quietly rewired the way he moved through each day. Once the idea settled in his mind, everything else became preparation. He continued living as usual on the surface, attending meetings, answering calls, and planning a future that now felt uncertain. Beneath that calm routine, a storm was forming. Adrian began with silence. He told no one at first, not even Lily. He needed time to convince himself that he was not acting out of fear alone. Every morning, he replayed the reasons in his head, testing them the way he tested business ideas. Was this about control or survival? Was he protecting himself or sabotaging happiness? Lily noticed small changes. Adrian became quieter, more thoughtful. Sometimes he stared out windows longer than usual. When she asked if something was wrong, he smiled and said work was heavy. That was not a lie, but it was not the whole truth either. At night, when Lily slept beside him, Adrian lay awake listening to her breathing. It was steady and calm, the sound of someone at peace. He wondered how fragile that peace really was. He hated that doubt lived where trust should have been. The first step of the plan required outside help. Adrian contacted a private medical specialist he trusted, someone who had worked discreetly with public figures before. Their meeting took place in a quiet office, far from the city center. Adrian explained everything carefully, making it clear that no permanent harm would be done. The doctor listened without judgment, but not without concern. He warned Adrian about the emotional consequences, about how pretending to be physically broken could break something inside that might never fully heal. Adrian understood, accepted the risk. Next came the legal protection. Adrian met with his longtime lawyer, a person who had seen every side of him, both ruthless and generous. This was one of the few people he trusted completely. The lawyer was shocked at first, then deeply uncomfortable. But after hours of conversation, the lawyer agreed to help structure the illusion safely. Finances would appear frozen. Authority would temporarily shift. Everything would look real enough to pass scrutiny, but would leave no lasting damage. Adrian felt strange relief once the groundwork was laid. The hardest part, he believed, would be acting. He underestimated the cost. The staged accident was planned with careful detail. It would happen during a routine trip, something ordinary enough not to attract suspicion. When the day arrived, Adrian felt a tightness in his chest he had not felt in years. As events unfolded, he followed the script exactly, trusting the professionals around him. When he awoke in the hospital bed, surrounded by soft beeping sounds and white walls, reality blurred with performance. His legs were still strong, but he did not move them. Nurses spoke gently. Doctors explained the situation in careful tones. The story was delivered to Lily, with caution and concern. Adrian watched her reaction from the corner of his vision. Shock came first. Her face drained of color, her hands trembling as she reached for him. She asked the same questions over and over, refusing to accept uncertainty. Tears came later, quiet at first, then uncontrollable. She held his hand as if letting go might make him disappear. In that moment, guilt hit Adrian harder than expected. He had prepared himself for distance, for disappointment. He was not prepared for this level of pain. He almost spoke, but he stayed silent. The days that followed were heavy. Adrian was transferred to a private recovery facility. The illusion was reinforced daily through routine, treatment schedules, and careful language. He remained still, responding slowly, playing the role of a man whose body no longer listened. Lily barely left his side. She slept in a chair beside his bed, ignoring advice to rest. She learned how to help nurses reposition him. She fed him when his hands shook too much to hold utensils. She spoke to him constantly, even when he said little in return. Adrian watched everything. He saw the fear in her eyes. When doctors explained uncertain outcomes, he saw her nod bravely while holding back tears. He saw the way exhaustion pulled at her shoulders. Each observation cut deeper than the last. He told himself this was temporary, necessary. Visitors came and went. Some friends faded quickly. Others showed up out of obligation. Adrian noticed patterns he had seen before. Sympathy mixed with distance. Support offered in words, not action. Money changed hands quietly behind the scenes to maintain the story. News traveled fast in private circles. Rumors spread. Some exaggerated. Some questioned. Lily absorbed it all. As weeks passed, the world shifted around them. The wedding plans were postponed, then quietly set aside. Conversations turned practical. Living arrangements, care routines, long-term adjustments. Adrian expected Lily to pull away. She did not, at least not at first. She moved into the recovery facility temporarily, then into his home once he was discharged. She rearranged rooms to make them accessible. She learned patience the hard way. She cried alone in bathrooms and returned with forced smiles. Adrian felt trapped inside his own plan. Each day made it harder to justify the lie. Yet he reminded himself that time revealed truth, that real intentions surfaced under pressure. Slowly cracks appeared. They were small at first. A sigh held too long. A pause before answering. Lily grew quieter, less expressive. She still cared for him, but something had shifted. The weight of responsibility settled heavily on her. Adrian noticed how often she checked her phone now, how conversations ended quickly when he entered the room, how she sometimes stared at her reflection with a look he could not read. He told himself not to jump to conclusions. Months passed. The financial illusion began to take effect. Accounts appeared limited. Business decisions slowed. The house staff was reduced. Life became simpler, quieter, tighter. Lily adjusted, but not easily. She returned to work more often, staying late. When Adrian asked if she was tired, she said yes and changed the subject. She avoided discussing the future. When friends asked about plans, she answered vaguely. Adrian felt something unfamiliar growing inside him. Fear, not fear of being left, fear of what leaving would mean. Fear that his test might destroy something real. Fear that even if love failed, the blame would not belong to Lily alone. One evening, Adrian overheard a phone call. Lily's voice was low, tense. She spoke about pressure, about uncertainty, about feeling lost. She did not mention love. That absence was louder than any accusation. Adrian closed his eyes and let the truth settle where denial had lived. The test was working, but the cost was rising. He began to question whether knowing the truth was worth the pain he was causing, whether protection justified deception, whether love once wounded this deeply could ever return to its original shape at night. When Lily slept beside him again, exhaustion pulling her into restless dreams, Adrian stared at the ceiling just as he had before. Only now. The silence was heavier. The plan was no longer theoretical. It was alive, and it was slowly breaking both of them. Time stopped feeling normal after that. Days no longer had clear beginnings or endings. Everything blended together into routines built around care, silence, and unspoken tension. Adrian measured life now in small moments. The sound of the wheelchair rolling across the floor, the pause before Lily answered a question, the way her smile no longer reached her eyes. He noticed everything because there was little else to do. Being still gave him too much time to think. Too much time to replay the past and imagine futures that felt heavy and uncertain. Lily was still there. That mattered. She woke early to help him, prepared meals, managed appointments, and spoke kindly to him in front of others. Anyone watching from the outside would say she was devoted. Adrian told himself the same thing. Yet something inside him felt unsettled. Care had replaced romance. Love, once light and natural, now felt like responsibility. They spoke less about feelings and more about schedules. Conversations were practical. Who would be home late? Which bills needed attention? Which medical form needed signing? When Adrian tried to talk about emotions, Lily listened politely, but seemed distant, as if her mind was somewhere else. He missed the way she used to talk about small dreams, weekend trips, quiet dinners, a future that felt shared. Now, the future felt foggy, and neither of them reached for it. Visitors became fewer. Friends drifted away, unsure of what to say or how to act. Some avoided discomfort. Some avoided reminders that life could change suddenly. Adrian watched these disappearances without surprise. He had expected them. What he had not expected was how lonely Lily would become. She stopped inviting friends over. She stopped painting. The art supplies she once loved sat untouched in a corner. When Adrian asked why she no longer painted, she said she was tired. That answer became her shield. Late nights became common. Lily stayed out longer, saying work demanded more from her. Adrian believed her at first. Work had always been important to her. But patterns formed, and patterns were hard to ignore. She started dressing differently when she went out. Not extravagant, but more careful. More aware? Adrian noticed because once, he had been the reason she dressed that way. The guilt returned. He wondered whether he was watching love fade or watching someone adapt to survival. He reminded himself that this was the point of the test. Pressure revealed truth. But knowing that did not make the watching easier. One afternoon, Adrian overheard a conversation again. Lily was speaking to someone on the phone in the kitchen. Her voice was low, but urgent. She spoke about feeling trapped, about not knowing who she was anymore. She said she was tired of being strong. Adrian closed his eyes. She did not mention leaving him. She did not mention another person. But she did not mention love either. That absence hurt. As weeks passed, the financial pressure increased. The illusion tightened. Staff reductions meant Lily took on more responsibility. She handled tasks Adrian once managed effortlessly. The shift in power changed their dynamic. She became the one making decisions. Adrian became dependent Dependency is a quiet force. It reshapes relationships without asking permission. Lily began making choices without consulting him. Small ones at first, then bigger ones. Adrian understood logically. She had to. But emotionally it stung. He felt invisible in his own life. One evening, Lily came home late. She smelled of unfamiliar perfume, something subtle but different from anything she owned. Adrian noticed, because senses sharpen. When movement is limited, he asked how her day was. She hesitated before answering. It was a small pause. But it echoed loudly. She said work had been stressful and went to shower. Adrian stared at the doorway long after she disappeared behind it. He felt the weight of confirmation pressing down on him, though no proof yet existed. The next morning, she was unusually cheerful. Too cheerful. She spoke quickly, filled the silence with unnecessary details, and avoided eye contact. Adrian had seen this behavior before, long ago, in people hiding something. Still, he said nothing. He told himself that assumption was dangerous, that his fear could be shaping reality, that this test could make him see betrayal even where there was none. But doubt has a way of growing roots. Days later, a message appeared on Lily's phone while it sat charging beside Adrian's chair. The screen lit up briefly. A name he did not recognize. A short message. Familiar warmth and unfamiliar words. Adrian looked away immediately. He did not want to become someone who invaded privacy. He already felt he had crossed too many lines. Yet the image stayed in his mind, repeating itself. That night, he slept poorly. When Lily turned away from him in bed, space between them felt wider than the room. The following weeks confirmed his fears, slowly, painfully. Lily was not cruel. She did not abandon him, but she was changing. Pulling inward, reaching outward, she spent more time on her phone. She smiled at messages she did not share. When Adrian asked if everything was okay, she said yes too quickly. He began to feel like a burden. That realization hurt more than any imagined betrayal. Adrian questioned everything now. His motives, his past, his right to test someone's love. He wondered if his fear had created the very outcome he feared. If love, once placed under a microscope, could survive, he remembered the man he had been before money. Poor, uncertain, but hopeful. That man believed love was possible. Somewhere along the way, success had taught him to doubt. One evening, Lily finally spoke. She sat beside him, hands folded tightly in her lap. Her eyes looked tired. Honest. She said she was overwhelmed, that she loved him, but did not know how long she could keep living like this. She said she felt guilty for even thinking it, that she hated herself for wanting a life that did not revolve. Around illness, Adrian listened silently. Every word landed heavy. She did not mention anyone else. She did not accuse him. She simply admitted exhaustion, that honesty cut deeper than lies would have. After she went to bed, Adrian sat alone in the dark. He stared at the reflection of himself in the window. A man pretending to be broken, slowly breaking for real. He understood now that this test had no winners. Even if Lily stayed, the damage was done. Even if she left, the blame would not belong to her alone. The truth waited quietly. Patient and sharp, Adrian knew the moment was coming when the lie would no longer be sustainable. When silence would become cruelty, he did not yet know how or when he would end it. But he knew one thing clearly. Whatever happened next would change. Everything forever. The days after that, conversation felt heavier than all the months before. Something fragile had finally been spoken aloud, and once spoken, it could not be taken back. Adrian felt exposed, not because Lily had accused him, but because she had trusted him enough to admit her weakness. That honesty made his lie feel unbearable. He began noticing how careful Lily had become around him. She chose her words slowly, as if every sentence carried risk. She avoided complaining, avoided expressing frustration, avoided crying in front of him. She tried to be strong again, and that effort drained her even more. Adrian saw it all and felt powerless in a way he had never experienced. His wealth, his influence, his sharp mind meant nothing now. He was trapped by his own decision, watching the woman he loved fade under the weight of a life she never chose. The house felt different, quieter, colder. The walls that once felt protective now felt like they were closing in. Lily spent more time outside. Sometimes she said she was meeting a friend. Sometimes she said she needed air. Adrian stopped asking questions because he feared the answers, but silence does not protect the heart. It only delays pain. One afternoon, Adrian received a visit from his lawyer. The man looked concerned, not about finances, but about Adrian himself. He asked how long this would continue. He warned that emotional damage could not be undone as easily as legal structures. Adrian listened quietly. For the first time, he admitted out loud that he no longer knew how to stop. Ending the lie meant revealing everything. Continuing meant destroying something real. The lawyer left with a heavy expression, reminding Adrian that truth delayed often becomes cruelty. That night, Lily did not come home until late. When she did, she looked distant but calm, as if she had made peace with something. Adrian noticed she did not sit beside him as she usually did. She went straight to the bedroom. The distance felt final. The next morning, Lily told him she needed time. Not space from him, she explained, but space to think. She said she felt guilty for even asking, but she was drowning. She promised she would not abandon him, but she needed moments where she was not just a caregiver. Adrian nodded. He told her he understood. Inside, something broke quietly. Lily began staying away overnight occasionally, always explaining where she was, always careful to reassure him. Adrian believed she was not lying about where she slept. What hurt was knowing she needed to be anywhere else but beside him. During one of those nights alone, Adrian finally allowed himself to cry. Not dramatic sobs, but silent tears that came without warning. He cried for the man he used to be. He cried for the trust he had never learned to give freely. He cried for the damage he had caused while trying to protect himself. In the weeks that followed, the truth revealed itself slowly, without confrontation. It came through patterns, through energy shifts, through the way Lily smiled differently after certain messages, through the way she returned home lighter, calmer, as if someone else now carried part of her burden. Adrian did not need proof to understand. One evening, Lily sat across from him and spoke carefully. She said she had met someone. She said it was not planned, not physical at first, not meant to happen. She said she felt ashamed, but also relieved. She said she had never felt so lonely in her life as she had while being strong for him. Adrian listened. Without interruption, she did not blame him. She blamed the situation, the endless pressure, the fear, the loss of herself. Adrian realized then that the test had reached its cruel conclusion. She said she had not decided anything yet. She said she still cared deeply for him, but care was no longer enough to fill the space where partnership used to be. After she left the room, Adrian sat alone for a long time. The house was silent except for the ticking of a clock. Each second sounded like accusation. He knew what he had to do. The next day, Adrian asked Lily to sit with him. His voice shook as he told her there was something she needed to know. He asked her to listen until the end. He took a deep breath and stood up. For a moment, Lily did not understand what she was seeing. Her eyes widened. Her face lost color. She stood frozen as Adrian took a step forward, then another. He told her everything about the fear, the past betrayals, the decision to pretend, the doctors, the lawyers, the illusion, the test. Each word landed like a blow. Lily backed away slowly, shaking her head. She did not shout. She did not cry at first. She looked at him as if he were a stranger. When the tears came, they were full of anger. She said he had taken her choice away, that he had turned her love into an experiment, that he had watched her suffer while sitting silently. Adrian did not defend himself. He accepted every word. She said the pain of betrayal now belonged to both of them. That night, Lily packed a bag and left. She said she needed time far away from him, from the house. From everything, Adrian did not stop her. He stood alone in the living room long after the door closed, feeling the weight of what he had done, settle fully for the first time. The truth had come out, and it had destroyed more than lies. It had destroyed trust. Adrian understood now that love tested under deception does not survive unchanged. Even when intentions are rooted in fear, the damage is real. As he sat alone, he realized that the greatest loss was not Lily leaving. It was the man he could have been. Had he chosen trust over control, the house stayed silent after Lily left. Not the peaceful silence Adrian once enjoyed, but a heavy kind that pressed against his chest. Every room carried reminders of a life that no longer existed. A cup left on the counter, a jacket hanging by the door. Small details that now felt painfully loud. For the first few days, Adrian did nothing. He did not answer calls. He did not check emails. He sat by the same window where he used to watch the sunrise and wondered how someone could lose so much without a single object being taken away. He replayed everything again and again. Every moment where he could have stopped. Every choice where fear spoke louder than love. He realized that while he had tested Lily, he had also failed his own test. When the lawyer called, Adrian finally answered. The illusion was ended officially. Accounts restored. Authority returned. The world slowly shifted back to normal around him. But inside, nothing felt normal. People assumed he was relieved, that he was free. He was not. Money returned, but peace did not. Strength returned, but pride did not. Adrian moved through his days like a man relearning how to exist. He started walking long distances again, not for exercise, but to feel grounded. Each step reminded him that his body was never broken. Only his trust had been. Weeks passed before Lily reached out, not to return, but to talk. They met in a quiet public place. Neutral ground. She looked calmer, stronger, but also guarded. They spoke honestly for the first time, without fear. She told him she did not regret caring for him. What she regretted was losing herself while being watched. She said the lie had hurt more than the imagined illness ever could. Adrian listened. He apologized without explanation, without defense. He did not ask for forgiveness. He understood that forgiveness is not owed. It is offered, or it is not. They parted kindly, but separately. Life moved forward. Adrian sold the house on the hill. He no longer wanted distance from the world. He moved into a smaller place closer to the city, closer to people. He reconnected with the community center where he had first met Lily. Not to relive the past, but to remember who he was before fear shaped his choices. He funded programs quietly. He volunteered anonymously. He listened more than he spoke. Sometimes loneliness returned. Sometimes regret followed. But Adrian did not run from those feelings anymore. He accepted them as part of growth. He learned that love is not proven through tests, but through trust given freely. That control feels safe, but it slowly kills connection. That fear, when left unchecked, becomes its own kind of betrayal. Months later, Adrian saw Lily again by chance. She was laughing, paint on her hands, life in her eyes. She looked whole. He smiled. Not because it didn't hurt, but because it meant she survived the storm too. As Adrian walked away, he understood the truth that nearly destroyed him. It also saved him, not from heartbreak, but from becoming someone incapable of love. And that lesson, though costly, was the most valuable thing he would ever own. Life did not suddenly become easy after everything ended. Healing did not arrive in a dramatic moment. It came slowly, quietly, in ways that were easy to miss if someone was not paying attention. Adrian learned that moving on was not about forgetting. It was about learning how to live with memory without letting it control him. He created new routines. Morning walks replaced long hours of staring out windows. Simple meals replaced quiet dinners meant for two. He kept his days full, not to escape pain, but to give himself structure. Some days felt lighter. Others felt heavy for no clear reason. People around him assumed he had recovered fully. They saw a man walking confidently again, working again, smiling again. What they did not see were the moments late at night when regret returned uninvited. Moments when he wondered how things could have been different if he had chosen trust over fear. Adrian did not avoid those thoughts anymore. He faced them. He let them pass instead of fighting them. Slowly, they lost their sharp edges. The community center became a quiet anchor in his life. He volunteered regularly, helping with repairs, organizing programs, and listening to people's stories. He never shared his own in detail. He learned that listening was a form of healing, too. Children greeted him with excitement. They did not know who he was or what he had lost. They only knew he showed up, kept promises, and treated them kindly. In their honesty, Adrian found something he had not felt in a long time. Peace. One afternoon, organizing supplies, he met someone new. Not in a dramatic way. Not with sparks or sudden emotion. Just a calm conversation about paint colors and broken shelves. The interaction felt easy, unforced, and free of expectation. Adrian noticed that ease. He did not rush it. He did not analyze it. He simply allowed it to exist. Weeks passed and conversations became familiar. Trust grew slowly, without tests or fear. Adrian did not share his past immediately. He learned that some truths should be revealed with care, not used as armor or weapons. When he finally spoke about his mistakes, he did so honestly. Not to impress. Not to gain sympathy, but to be transparent. The response surprised him. There was no judgment. No shock, just understanding and clear boundaries. That response taught Adrian something important. Trust does not come from perfection. It comes from accountability, for the first time. Adrian felt hopeful without being afraid of hope. He still thought of Lily sometimes. Not with longing, but with gratitude. She had shown him the cost of control and the value of honesty. He wished her well, sincerely. One evening, Adrian returned to the hill where his old house once stood. The space was empty now, waiting for something new. He stood there briefly, watching the city below. It no longer felt distant. It felt connected. He understood then that life does not give lessons gently, but it gives chances to grow if one is willing to accept them. Adrian walked away from the hill with steady steps, carrying less fear and more understanding than ever before. This time, he did not look back. Life had a way of surprising Adrian when he stopped trying to control it. After everything he had been through, he no longer chased certainty. Instead, he focused on showing up honestly, one day at a time. That choice changed the rhythm of his life in ways he never expected. His days became quieter, but fuller. Mornings started with simple routines. He walked through familiar streets, greeted the same shop owners, and learned their names. These small connections grounded him. They reminded him that life was not measured only by big moments, by consistency and care. The community center continued to play an important role in his life. It was no longer just a place he volunteered. It felt like a shared space where stories crossed paths naturally. Adrian helped wherever he was needed, never asking for recognition. People trusted him because he listened without judgment and spoke without pretense. Over time, conversations deepened. People opened up about their struggles, their fears, and their hopes. Adrian recognized parts of himself in many of their stories: loss, regret, the desire to start over. These shared experiences reminded him that pain was not something to hide from, but something that connected people. One evening after everyone had left, Adrian sat alone in the center's quiet room. The walls were covered with artwork made by children and adults alike. Imperfect lines, bold colors, honest emotion. He realized something important in that moment. Real beauty was never polished. It was sincere. That realization stayed with him. As months passed, Adrian found himself laughing more easily. Not forced laughter, but genuine moments of lightness. He noticed how fear no longer guided his decisions. When doubt appeared, faced it. Instead of building walls around it, he allowed himself to care again, this time without tests. The connection he had slowly built with someone new continued to grow naturally. There was no pressure to define it quickly, no expectations tied to the future, just mutual respect and honesty. Adrian learned that love did not need grand gestures to feel real. It needed consistency, patience, and truth. When difficult conversations arose, they were addressed openly. When boundaries were needed, they were respected. This balance felt unfamiliar at first, but also safe. Adrian realized how much emotional safety mattered more than control. He shared his past more fully over time. Not all at once, not dramatically, just enough to be understood. He spoke about mistakes openly, without shame or excuse. Each time, the response reinforced what he was learning. Honesty builds trust. Fear destroys it. Adrian also rebuilt his relationship with himself. He forgave the younger version of him who believed love had to be tested to be real. He understood now that fear had been a survival instinct, not a flaw. But survival was no longer enough. He wanted to live fully. One afternoon, while walking through the city, Adrian passed the place where his life had once felt divided. He paused briefly, then continued walking. He no longer needed to stand still in the past. As the seasons changed, so did his perspective. He stopped measuring life by what he had lost and started appreciating what he had gained. Wisdom, patience, clarity. Adrian knew now that real strength was not pretending to be unbreakable. It was allowing himself to be seen, fully and honestly. At the end of one quiet day, Adrian returned home. Tired, but content. He sat by the window, watching the city lights come alive. The view was different now, closer, warmer. For the first time in a long while, he felt at peace, not because everything was perfect, but because he was no longer running from himself, and that peace earned through pain and growth. It felt more valuable than anything he had ever owned. Life did not pause after peace arrived. It continued to move, quietly testing whether the lessons Adrian had learned would stay with him when new challenges appeared. Growth, he discovered, was not a destination. It was a practice. As his days settled into a steady rhythm, Adrian began to feel a pull toward purpose beyond healing. He had learned how to be still, how to listen, how to forgive himself. Now he wanted to build again, but differently than before. He returned to work slowly, not chasing expansion or recognition. He chose projects that solved real problems for real people. Smaller ideas. Slower progress. Deeper impact. For the first time, success was not about proving anything. People noticed the change in him. Meetings felt calmer. Decisions felt thoughtful. Adrian no longer spoke to dominate a room. He asked questions. He invited disagreement. Trust grew naturally because it was not demanded. Outside of work, his relationships deepened. Friendships that once stayed on the surface became more honest. Adrian shared more of himself, not the version shaped by achievement, but the one shaped by experience. He learned how to sit with discomfort without needing to fix it. When misunderstandings happened, he addressed them openly. When mistakes were made, he owned them quickly. These habits slowly reshaped the way people related to him. One evening, Adrian attended a small gathering at the community center. People shared stories of personal change. Some spoke about loss, others about recovery. When it was Adrian's turn, he did not speak about wealth or success. He spoke about fear. He spoke about how fear can disguise itself as protection, how it can convince people that control is love, how letting go feels dangerous, but holding too tightly destroys what matters most. The room was silent when he finished, not because the words were dramatic, but because they were honest. After that night, people began seeking Adrian out. Not for money or advice about business, but for perspective. He listened more than he spoke, reminding himself that everyone's journey was different. He did not position himself as a guide. He simply shared what he had learned when asked. Meanwhile, the connection he had been nurturing continued to grow steadily. It was not perfect. Disagreements happened. Misunderstandings arose. But instead of withdrawing, Adrian leaned in. He chose clarity over avoidance. Trust, he realized, was not built by grand promises. It was built by consistent actions. There were moments when old instincts surfaced, moments when fear whispered that history might repeat itself, but Adrian no longer obeyed that voice blindly. He acknowledged it, questioned it, and chose differently. One afternoon, while walking alone, Adrian passed a mirror in a shop window and barely recognized the man looking back. Not because he looked younger or stronger, but because his expression was lighter, softer. He smiled. That night, as he sat quietly, Adrian thought about the path that had led him here, the mistakes, the pain, the lessons learned too late. He did not wish any of it away without those experiences. He would not understand the value of trust without loss. He would not recognize peace without fear. He would not know courage. Adrian understood now that life does not reward perfection. It responds to honesty. As the city settled into sleep outside his window, Adrian felt a calm certainty. Whatever came next, he would face it openly. Without tests, without disguises, just as himself. And for the first time, that felt like enough.